Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Today, we're discussing a fairly rare timepiece. From Patek Philippe, this is the 5270G-014. So it's a dial variant that only persisted from early 2013 to early 2015. And it was sort of an interim model between the original 2011 dial variant of the 5270 and later variants that featured a little bit of a different dial. So let's talk about the basics, then we'll talk about the dial. So the model debuted in white gold in 2011. And dimensionally, this is just like the original. 41 millimeters in diameter in gray gold, more on that in a moment. It's 12.8 millimeters thick and 49.4 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, it wears fairly easily, comfortable, flat, flush, flatter than you would think given the complexity. It's not an oversized watch, but it is a full-sized watch. I'm going to recommend it because I do have a little bit of clearance on either side of my wrist. The lugs are not overhanging. I'm going to recommend it for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference or larger. The strap, primarily large and medium scale, alligator leather, semi-gloss, dark blue, a sheer cut edge that's been lacquered for refinement with a monotone stitch, calfskin on the bottom. It uses pull-tab spring bars, so you can quickly pop it off the case. You can see the condition of the strap is superb. The buckle is a single fold in white gold to match the case. You can see there's a little radial spring inside so that the snap shut action is a bit more secure than a standard friction fit clasp. And then the buckle is the Calatrava Cross, the symbol of Patek Philippe. You can also see it, among other places, on the crown. The case is made of gray gold, which is the good stuff. It's 18 karat white gold, but it does not need to be rhodium plated. It's got a slightly warmer tone to it than rhodium plated white gold, but again, it doesn't need to be plated. So that also means if it's scratched, the scratch shows the same color metal underneath. So it doesn't have the pitfalls of rhodium plated white gold. You can see the case is fairly complex. We have these stepped lugs. We have a diminishing fluted profile as the lugs taper towards their end. You can see the bezel is somewhat stepped in from the case band, but so is the case back to make the watch thinner on the wrist. The bezel looks like it might be conical, but it's actually slightly bowed in. It's a concave profile. Visually, it thins out the watch. And then we have these rectangular vintage-inspired pushers that have satin finished edges and then polished outer faces. Patek Philippe case making has just evolved by leaps and bounds since it purchased Atelier Réuni back in 1975, and the cases it builds are now quite complex. So the watch does, first and foremost, have two features people always ask me about. One is instantaneous jumping minutes, which you're about to see right here. Watch the minute disc. Boom. The other feature, people ask, why don't Patek movements hack? Well, the answer is most of the modern Patek calibers do hack, and this is one of them. So I mentioned gray gold as a non-rhodium plated 18 karat white gold, but I also mentioned that this was a short-lived dial, so let me explain myself. The original 2011 version of the 5270 did not include a tachymetric scale. One was added subsequently. So for 2013, the scale was added, but something had to be done about the date, which is a radial style date done at 6 o'clock. So this little distortion of the tachymetric scale to wrap around the date was added. And it has been discussed as a sort of chin. So it's nicknamed the chin by Patek Philippe collectors, and the chin was short-lived. 13 to 15. So if you like short-lived designs, especially dial variants, this is definitely for you. The watch features a number of elements. The tachymetric scale can be used to gauge the speed of, for example, a race car over a kilometer. What you do is you reset it. And by the way, the column wheel action here is divine. But you wait till the car starts the kilometer, then you start the chronograph, and you wait until the car finishes the kilometer. And at that point, it's coming up towards the end of the kilometer. You stop, And now you can see that was 300 kilometers per hour across the kilometer. That's how that works. Early speeding tickets were often assigned on a similar basis. The hands, as well as the indices, are white gold, so they'll never tarnish or oxidize. We have a perpetual calendar, which does not need any corrections, provided the watch keeps running until the year 2100. Leap years, irregular length months, it takes them in stride. The moon phase is a little bit different. It has an endurance of 122 years in between corrections. So if you correct it, you'll need to correct it again 122 years later. Leap year phase indicator, red 4 means you're in the leap year. Obviously, we'd have to correct that because that is not what 2025 is. The summer Olympic year is the leap year for your easy reference. But that's simple because you just adjust that using the pusher adjusters on the case flank. But you need to know not to adjust using those pushers at night. So, for example, if you use those pushers at night, you can damage the movement. So you get this little day-night indicator over between 7 and 8 o'clock. So for example, if I want to know, is this 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.? Well, 8 a.m., I would be safe to set the calendar. 8 p.m., I should not use these pushers. And you can see that it is dark, so this is 8 p.m. Excellent column wheel feel. Turn it all over. Caliber 29/535 PSQ, Petit Second Quantième. So it is a small second, there's a small second, with a calendar system. Something I should probably mention is that these 29/535s, they're a little quirky. People always ask me about the design of the dial. It is inherent in the movement that if you look at the small seconds and the minutes, they're slightly below the center line of the hands at the middle of the dial. A little bit of a quirk. Column wheel feel is world class. Lateral clutch, 4 Hz beat rate, free-sprung gyromax style balance, chronometer and high horology adjustment standard is 5 positions, and that's what this has. 33 joule movement, 65-hour manual wind power reserve, and beautifully decorated. You can see that all of the chronograph parts are steel. They're either polished or brushed on their top, beveled on their edges. The parts, the bridges and plates that are brass are rhodium plated, but they're striped across their top surfaces, so you can see these stripes, the Côte de Genève. We have anglage on the edges of both bridges and chronograph parts, satination on wheels. You can see engine turning in 2 different sizes below the plane of the top of the movement. All screw heads are mirror finished with their slots and circumference chamfered. We have the instantaneous minute jumper right here. And then the watch is 30 meters water resistant, but you definitely don't want to take it swimming. Taking a look, you can see some elements of finishing are purely nostalgic, but they do recall practical concerns. So for example, here we have these golden chatons in the chronograph clutch. Not necessary today, but there was a time when you wanted to press jewels into bridges and plates, you would press them into a precision golden cup and then press that into the bridges and plates, back before high precision tooling was available. Anglage was once created for functional practical reasons. If you milled a surface, you might leave a 90-degree edge between the top and the edge of a bridge or a lever, and you might leave burrs on the edge. And if you contacted that with your tool by accident, it could break off a burr that could fall into the gear train. So the mirrored beveling, it started as simple beveling just to remove 90-degree angles and burrs. So it was functional. The capped column wheel, you can see a mirror-finished cap on this column wheel. Once upon a time, the idea was that if your pocket watch was concussed or shocked, the levers and horns of the chronograph components, they might actually pop out of the crenellated towers of the column wheel, and so the cap was added. And then the bevels for the jewel settings, before we had cup-shaped or olive-shaped jewels, the little beveling would create a cup that would tend to draw the oil back down into the jewel rather than allowing it to spread across all of the bridges. So even that beveling in the jewel sinks had a purpose. It is a beautiful movement. The free-sprung architecture makes it more shock-resistant and allows more precise adjustment with those variable inertia screws on the balance rim. And the overcoil hairspring means that in any physical position, the centered mass of the overcoil makes this watch a more reliable and consistent timekeeper. And it is a very different stylistic set of choices and priorities compared to the Lange Datograph, but the Lange L951 is not more beautiful than this. It is a dead heat between them. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.